So without further ado, we'll get right to starting. Tonight we have a robust agenda. Karen is going to start us off with a sort of state of the union about God's Love We Deliver, where we are, all that we've accomplished, and all that we need to do. David will then follow up with a run through of our finances, all the fundraising that we were able to do during COVID-19, and what we have ahead of us. And then Stephen will give us an update on new volunteer protocols and processes. And then finally, Yolanda will give us an update on welcoming back longtime volunteers and everything that people can expect when they come to God's Love We Deliver. So again, we're so thrilled that you're all here with us tonight. Please, if you have any questions, please, again, drop them in the chat at any time during the session. And without further ado, I will send it on over to Karen. So Karen.
Hi, everybody. It is so great to see so many of your names on this list tonight. I'm really, really excited to be talking with you. And I know that all of us here at God's Love really miss those of you who have not been able to be on your regular shifts. And we look forward to when that will happen. And hopefully that will be sooner than any of us think. Who knows? But we can't wait to see you. As you know, we're holding this town hall in part because we are dealing with two very significant issues during these past numbers of months. And the one that we most especially want to talk with you about tonight is the COVID pandemic, but also the second one that is just kind of on top of that, which is all of the work that's going on now around racial justice and racial injustice. And we've been doing our best to keep you apprised of what we're doing on both fronts through all of our communication channels, including town halls and also social media. I'm sure you agree with me that God's Love has always been about addressing healthcare disparities as well as racial injustice, because we serve those who are affected by both, who are most affected by both, the people for whom circumstances are such that their health is really greatly affected by lack of access to good health care very often, and certainly by lack of access to good food. And then they are often in communities where the injustices are kind of piled on that. So we are going to continue to work on both of those fronts, and we'll continue to do so in an even a more conscious and direct way as time rolls out. One of the first steps that we've taken is actually happened last night, where we had an open discussion with our staff about how we as a community can best support racial equity. And we look forward to many more of those dialogues, and then obviously the action that will come from that. Turning to our COVID specific efforts, I'm really proud of the success that we've had. It has taken just yeoman's work on the part of so many. Our dedicated staff really stepped up and changed almost everything that we do. Our menu, our protocols, our fundraising, kind of everything. I'm happy to report that the staff is doing pretty well considering all that they have been dealing with for these past few months. For instance, we were able to, once we decided that half of our staff had to work from home, we were able to swiftly make that decision basically on a Friday, and by that Monday they were up and ready to work. Many needed new equipment, they needed support. We were able to furnish all of that. The other half of our staff has been showing up every single day, and those are the staff that most of you know best. They're on our production side, working in the kitchen, meal packaging, delivery facilities, and volunteer services. And they have been doing just such a terrific job with all of the volunteers who are able to come here. Of course, doing it all with masks on and with social distancing. Stephen will share with you many of those changes that have been going on later on in this presentation. I said earlier that virtually everything had changed here, and I just wanted to say the one thing that hasn't changed, and that is, of course, the love and the caring that go into every single one of our meals, as well as every single one of our deliveries. And I know that our clients really feel it. They are telling us how much they appreciate it, how much they appreciate that the volunteers are still showing up and helping to get them the meals that they are counting on. And I really want to thank you on behalf of all of us here at God's Love and on behalf of all of our clients who just want you to know how much we count on you for ensuring that we're able to rise to the occasion of this pandemic and also really meet the needs of our clients who, as I said, are really grateful that with everything else that has fallen down in their lives, that we are still there for them. The next thing I wanted to do was jump in and tell you a little bit about how the pandemic has actually affected us here at God's Love. And the first thing I want to talk about, if you wouldn't mind switching the slide. Julie? There you go. Thank you. It is growth. So this is one of our wonderful clients. His name is Renard, and he is been on our program for a little while, but he has been joined by about 1,500 new clients. We have 25% more clients since March 1st, and that has required us to do a lot of things in order to be able to ramp up our services that quickly. So one of the things that we have done is we launched an eligibility screener on our website. So far, 3,600 people have gone on our website, either themselves or been a referral, to find out whether or not a potential client would fit our eligibility criteria. And as I think you all know, that's two things. People need to have a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis, and they need to have some activity of daily living that is compromised so that they are unable to shop or cook for themselves. And of those 3,600 people who have tried out the eligibility screener, 52% have been eligible and they have reached out for services. And then the remaining people who are not eligible have had a warm handoff to a different food program, largely put up by the city to meet this crisis, because the city is actually delivering about 1 million meals a day across all of the boroughs to lots and lots of people between children, families, and seniors. Another thing that we have done is we have shortened our intake process so that we can move that along faster. And that we have redesigned some of our routing so that we can have more efficient routing that is better balanced. So if we get a lot of clients in one neighborhood, we're not just putting them all on one route, but we're separating them out so our routes can all be done in an effective way. Then we've also, of course, if you have clients grow, we have meal growth. And in the meal growth, we're doing about 10,000 meals every day in our kitchen and getting them delivered daily to our clients. We've also made a number of menu improvements that many of you may not know about. These were in the works pre-COVID, but we have kept them going during COVID. One is a pescatarian menu for clients who want as their main protein either vegetarian or fish, but not beef, not chicken, not pork. And so we have rolled that out for those clients. We are also really moving more and more into sustainable foods for environmental reasons. So we are now using only wild-caught salmon and pollock, and really trying to have all of our fish be wild. We are also using hormone-free and antibiotic-free chickens, and we are using grass-fed beef. And I'm happy to say we're doing all of that within our same budget, through new sourcing and through better pricing as we have grown. We've also rolled out a couple of new soup and dessert recipes, much to the delight of clients, and we've been able to keep those going as well during the pandemic. So one thing that has there have been a number of things that have allowed us to make all of these changes, and Stephen will talk to you about that in a little while. The last thing I wanted to talk about is delivery, because when we bring on 25% new clients, or about 1,500 people, in the course of just a couple of months, that really stresses our delivery system. Because as you know, it's the last mile of delivery that is the most difficult, because that's the one that is literally one-to-one. You need one driver for one client. And I'm happy to say that our delivery department has stepped up to be able to do that with some very creative solutions, utilizing ongoing van assistance, utilizing temporary drivers, renting some vans so that we make sure that we have enough of a fleet. So that is going as well as can be expected, and we are able to meet the challenge of more and more and more deliveries. I just wanted to say one last thing about this whole growth thing. A lot of people have asked me, how is it that all of a sudden we got all these clients? Like, what is it about COVID that made that happen? And I just thought you would be interested in some of the trends that we're seeing. They may not explain every single situation, but I think they together encompass most of them. One is that because of social distancing requirements and the fear that our clients have of getting COVID, they are, to begin with, very sick. And if they got COVID, they'd probably be among those who are unable really to manage COVID. They would be the ones who potentially would get hospitalized and potentially not make it through. And so because of social distancing, many neighbors who might have looked in on them or family members who might have looked in on these new clients stopped going to their homes, further isolating people, but also keeping them safe. And so more people had no food source. Similarly, literally overnight, all of the senior centers and adult day centers closed. That is where so many seniors in our city went for food. They went for other things too, but primarily they went for food. And when those closed, people had nowhere to turn. And so many of them turned to God's love. Many of the options that sprung up to feed people just weren't nutritionally sound enough. And our client and people who are sick, as we all know, need the right food and need good food. And therefore they counted on us. And then lastly, just the greater visibility of our services made it clear that we were open, we were operating, we were cooking, we were delivering, and so people flocked to us. And all of those things combined created truly about a 3,000 person surge of people who inquired about our program. And about the 1,500 or so who are on our program now are those who qualified. Many of the rest of that surge, again, we did that warm handoff. So that's part of the all that we have been dealing with on the program side, and really making sure that we're there for people who need us and who want to and who need our food because they're sick and they need the kind of specialized and delicious food that only God's love provides. So with that, I am going to, I think, turn this over to David. I say I think because while I was talking, I saw some chat about whether or not we were going to pause. So David, it's up to you.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, everyone. I'm David Ludwigson. I'm the Vice President and Chief Development Officer here at God's Love We Deliver. So nice to see so many of you with us on our virtual volunteer town hall, and to have seen many of you now back in the building, and I know many others have plans to return in the coming weeks. So we can't wait to see you all back at God's Love. I'm going to take just a minute to talk a little bit about our costs associated with COVID, the fundraising that we've done, and then some concerns that we have going into the next fiscal year. And I will start with the cost side. And what you can see here on this slide is just a very small portion of the 210,000 shelf-stable meals that we sent to our clients after COVID, to make sure that if anything happened to our meal delivery, that they would have food in their home. This is the largest cost that we've incurred to date. Since March, the incremental cost of COVID is well over $1 million. The non-perishable food also includes a lot of temporary staff that we've hired to make sure that we're staffed up for this. van rentals. It includes a lot of supplies, including personal protection equipment and increased cleaning and sanitation here in the building. It also includes a lot of equipment that we had to purchase to make sure that our staff could work remotely, which most of the staff is now doing, at least on a part-time basis. So between the beginning of COVID and the end of December, we are expecting that incremental costs related to the pandemic will total somewhere in the $7 to $8 million range. So that's the bad news. The good news is, let's talk a little bit about the support that we've received around COVID. And it's really been quite remarkable. The support we've received, of course, will cover the costs associated with COVID, but it will also help us cover the revenue that we lost due to event cancellations. We had to cancel 2 of our signature events, the new Food Meets Design event, which will come back next year, and our Midsummer Drinks event, which will also come back next year. And it also will help cover the more than $600,000 that we lost in ticket revenue that we had to refund through Ticketmaster for our Love Rocks New York City concert. But we're doing well. To date, we've raised over $8 million to help support our COVID efforts. It sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money, and we're going to need it down the road to pay for all those extra clients that Karen was speaking about. The support has come really in 3 buckets. It's come in kind, it's come from the government, and it's come from fundraising. Our in-kind donations have really been remarkable. We've received lots of supplies, including literally tens of thousands of masks and gloves, hand sanitizers. We've got temperature taking machines that we're going to roll out soon, and also lots and lots of food, both for the kitchen and for staff and volunteers to have as snacks. On the government side, we received wonderful funding from the city and also a PPP loan that will turn into a grant. And finally, on the fundraising side, fundraising has come from diverse sources, from individuals, from corporations and foundations. And really, spectacularly, our digital fundraising due to COVID has exceeded more than $1 million, which is really remarkable. Just a couple other numbers that are outstanding. We've received more than 40,000 gifts through May 31st, year to date. That's 10,000 more than we had at this time last year. And also that includes more than 6,000 new donors, which is really exciting. And certainly we need every gift and every donor going into the next fiscal year. And our job on the development side is going to be really focused on how do we retain these donors, these 6,000 new donors, and keep them in the family well, all the while keeping our regular fundraising coming in. So that's on the cost side, the fundraising side. So let's just talk for a couple minutes about some things that keep us awake at night. Overall fundraising for the next fiscal year, of course, is going to be a concern. The only thing that we can really think is a comparable to this COVID pandemic is the recession of 2008, when fundraising fell by about 7%. And even that we don't think is really an apples to apples comparison. This is such an unusual and unprecedented thing that's happening. So of course it gives us a reason to pause and have concern. Around events, we have a lot of concern. As you all know, we do a lot of events at God's Love. It accounts for a great deal of our fundraising. And the concerns will be twofold. One, if we're allowed to have group gatherings, that's one side of it, but will people be ready to gather in groups even if we're allowed to do that? So we're working through that. The events team is working really hard to become expert at virtual events and all of the new things that are out there, and we'll be ready for it, whatever it is. We're concerned about corporate and foundation funding. We received a lot of corporate and foundation grants for COVID, The concern would be if those grants were in lieu of an annual grant we would expect down the road, that's a problem. So we'll keep our eyes on that. And then in major giving, of course, if people are feeling that they can't make the sizable gifts they're used to making, that'll be a concern for us. And finally, there'll be a concern on the expense side. Karen mentioned all of these new clients that have been enrolled in the program. Will they stay with us? Now, many of them will, some of them won't. When the pandemic wanes, we expect them to leave the program and our numbers might go down slightly, but they'll settle out at a much higher number and then we'll continue to grow from there. So that's where all this extra COVID funding will come into play over the coming year. We'll need that to pay for those clients. And certainly, we really appreciate everything that you do as volunteers. If you want to help, we need you more than ever. Tell your friends about the work that we're doing. Help us amplify our message. If you're on social media, our handle is right there. It's at God's Love NYC. Please talk about us, repost, get the message out about God's love. Tell your corporate friends about what we're doing. There's lots and lots of ways that we appreciate your help and you can stay involved until the time you come back to the building. And then of course, during the time that you're back in the building, we really appreciate the support. So that's all I have right now. And I am going to turn it over to Steve and Marion.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. We missed seeing everybody at God's Love, and it was nice to see a couple of familiar faces that were the last few days when I was there visiting, checking in, and getting some things done. One thing that we've learned is whether during this COVID mess or if you've been there for 30 years, it's amazing that everyone comes together and just gets the work done and we have fun doing it. So it's great that everybody's there and everyone's working together. So I'm just going to review a couple of things about some new policies and some new procedures that we have going on for when you're coming back into the building and when we're getting started back at God's Love We Deliver. So first of all, we're going to jump into our kitchen and see what's happening in our kitchen. We introduced a streamlined menu in our kitchen with fewer production steps per item, increasing efficiency, and also fewer items increases the all-important freezer space. So you can see from this production whiteboard that we have in the kitchen that there's a lot fewer items that are happening here in the kitchen with our streamlined menu. We look forward to welcoming back the different shifts in the kitchen. So Yolanda will talk about that when we'll be bringing back some of our shifts that have disappeared. Also, the baking shift has taken a hiatus for a short period of time, but don't worry, our good friends at Kennard have been baking our goodies for our clients, and they have been receiving their baked goods, and we are still baking birthday cakes out of our kitchen, out of the Joan Rivers Bakery. So our clients are still receiving their beloved birthday cakes on their birthday. So that's still wonderful. Moving into meal packaging, we split our meal packaging up into 2 different floors. So you can see here from this next picture, did it go to the next picture? Pete Webb here is volunteering here on the 5th floor. So we separated meal packaging from the 1st floor and the 5th floor to practice social distancing. So if you are a meal packaging volunteer, you'll be working on 2 different floors for social distancing. Everyone's wearing masks as well, so everybody is spaced out. We're looking forward to getting our 5th floor back so we can host events, but for the time being, we are spaced out between the 2 different floors. In delivery, Kendu here, our driver, is our new social distancing protocol for delivery with gloves and face masks. Also, our delivery protocol is to use hand sanitizer before and after the deliveries, making sure that we're protecting ourselves and protecting our clients. And on the next slide, you can see our client, Milagro. We still are able to have conversations with our clients, which are very important, which is all about delivering love. But what we do is a no contact delivery. So what our delivery van drivers will do and what our van assistants will do is they will drop the meal at the door and they will step back 6 feet and wait for the client to answer the door and have contact with them. They'll have their exchange, check on them, see how they're doing, make sure everything's well, make sure that they got their meal, and then move about their day. So it's really important that we still have that connection with our client, but that we're doing it from a safe social distance. So we're still able to do that with our clients. Now, when you come into our building, there's a couple more procedures that happen. So there may be a line when you're entering the building, and you might wonder what that's for. That's because we're doing a health screening for everyone, all of our volunteers, all of our staff, all of our guests that come into the building go through a health screening. So you can see here on the left, Arno is a new staff member who's asking our client, our staff member, Crystal, a few questions. Everyone's wearing a face mask as well. So face masks are required for all guests, volunteers, and staff members in the building. And then Adam is giving Crystal, as she moves into the building, some hand sanitizer. So everyone will receive hand sanitizer when they're coming into the building. So we just ask for your patience as you are entering the building. This happens every single time you're entering into our building. Just be aware of that, and that's just our new procedure as you're coming in to volunteer with us. In our kitchen, we're also practicing a lot of social distancing. You can see here a table as they're doing the basil pesto salmon. Perhaps maybe there were 4 volunteers on that table before, or maybe even 5. Now there are 2 volunteers on the table, so spacing themselves out. And the same thing on the pack out line. On the next slide, you can see the pack out line is a little bit more spaced out. And this does add a constraint. I know there was a question I saw in the chat box a little bit earlier about that this does put a strain. It's a little bit harder to space the meals out and pass them down. So we're going to check in with Daniel and see if we can add in a break for you guys, because it does take a little bit more of an effort because you are spaced out. You're not so close together, but it's important for social distancing while in the kitchen. So we'll definitely check in with Daniel and see if we can get a break worked into this for everybody. But it is important that we're practicing social distance. It's a team effort, so we're making sure that everyone's spaced out here. And lastly, in our volunteer lounge, we're also practicing social distance. We've moved chairs out of our volunteer lounge. So the volunteers who are doing our meal packaging and labeling are at separate tables. There's a few chairs in there for them to work on while they're practicing their social distance. So social distancing, masks while in the building at all times, hand sanitizer while you're entering, being pre-screened. So all of these are very important while being with us at God's Love We Deliver. So we're looking forward to welcoming everybody back, following all these procedures while you're back here at God's Love We Deliver. And the next topic I want to talk about is a reorg of the volunteer department, which is a very exciting thing that's going to be happening. So over the past 10, 11 plus years, what has happened is the director of volunteer services was also the director of special events and overlooked both departments. And that was great, as both of those departments were small and mighty as they were. So the events department, I've been with the events and volunteer department for the past almost 8 years now here in August. And the events department went from about $1 million a year in fundraising, and now we're raising over about $7 million a year. We've added other events. We've added Love Rocks NYC. We've added food meets. We've added hundreds of partner events that happen throughout the year. We've added an event venue space. The volunteers, when I started, before we moved to Brooklyn, we had about 6,000 volunteers a year. Now we're about 17,000 volunteers a year. We've added kitting shifts, baking shifts. We've added 4 to 6 shifts, walking deliveries. We've added volunteers in our garden, in our offices. So it's come to a point where we've realized that it's time to separate this responsibility out. So what we're going to be doing is, my current role as Director of Volunteer Services and Special Events is going to be split into Director of Events. So I will be taking on the Director of Events position. And Yolanda, who's been with us for about 1.5 years, is getting promoted into the Director of Volunteer Services. So congratulations is due for Yolanda, who's been promoted into the Director of Volunteer Services position, and she'll be taking on that role immediately with Yolanda and Roberto. And I'll be moving over to the Director of Events with Candy, Julia, and Christine from the events team. So without further ado, your new Director of Volunteer Services, Yolanda, to talk about some exciting news for you guys and what's happening moving forward.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much, and hello to everyone. This is truly an exciting opportunity for me to serve as the Director of Volunteer Services. I definitely have had the opportunity to work with an amazing team, with Stephen providing such great guidance, Shane and Roberto. So it's a seasoned team, it's an easy fit, and I so enjoy just being a part of that. I have had years of experience volunteering personally, as well as with my sorority. I truly love it here at God's Love, and the amazing volunteers that come in and commit their time and their services to us. So I just want to say to all the volunteers at this time, you are recognized, you are appreciated, and you are truly valued. You guys simply rock. So as everyone has said, we are working on returning and welcoming all our volunteers back into the building. So many of you were here during COVID, but many of you were out. But we have put a number of things in place. Since the pandemic has begun, we are following strict state guidelines around social distancing and accommodating our volunteers with limited space, specific number of volunteers in our kitchen. We are making sure that all criteria is being followed as far as social distancing. We've all talked about it. Kitting has been divided into 2 different floors to help with spacing out, but making sure that all of our important work is being done. We are asking that you continue to be understanding and flexible as we follow through and providing great services for our clients. So as we welcome back our volunteers, there's some important things that we need to talk about. So I have the pleasure of reminding everyone of some new rules that we've put in place to keep everyone safe. That includes our staff, our volunteers, our visitors, and our clients. We need to follow these rules at all times. Again, safety comes first. So let's start with number 1, limiting the number of daily volunteers. This is to maintain, again, social distancing. We want to talk about everyone needs to be registered too in Volunteer Hub. If you're not registered and the shift is full, you will not be able to stay and work that shift. 3, we will talk about arriving and departing in a timely fashion. We know our volunteers love each other and love to be able to communicate and talk before and after shift, and we love that as well. However, during COVID, we just want to maintain safety precautions at all times. The volunteer lounge will be opened 30 minutes, before your shift. We want to make sure that after your shift ends, that you leave. We want to be able to sanitize. We want to have you here, of course, at all times, but we also want to make sure that we clean and sanitize for the next group to come in and be safe as well. We also will be providing masks to all volunteers. If you have your mask, that's fine. If you do not, mask will be available at the front desk, as well as in the area in which you are volunteering. And now we're going to talk the fun stuff. As it gets warmer, summer dress code is important. So our dress code is enforced, of course, to protect against burns or other injuries in the kitchen, as well as to protect the food from possible contamination. So just be mindful that all skirts and shorts must go below the knee. No tank tops can be worn. All toes must be fully enclosed. And we also want to make sure that we are not using our cell phones in the kitchen. But most important, we want to talk about our mask. And I can't stress to you how important it is to wear your mask at all times. Okay. Sorry, I guess I was muffled. So again, the mask, it's important to wear your mask at all times. The mask must completely cover both your nose and your mouth. And with that being said, I want to say thank you guys so much for letting me be a part of this journey, and let's make amazing things work. If there are any questions at all as it relates to volunteer opportunities, questions about your specific shift, please contact us at volunteer@glwd.org, and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you guys so much, and I'm going to turn it over to Emmett.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for sitting with us during our presentation. We heard from some of you that the audio was a little difficult to hear throughout the presentation. So we do want to let you know that we are recording this Zoom, and we will be resending it out. We will send it out tomorrow to everybody. But please, continue to reach out to us in case there's anything that was too difficult to understand with the recording as well. We want to make sure that you all are able to get the information that we carefully presented for all of you. If my fellow panelists want to turn on their cameras and their microphones, that way we can all be together with our attendees. Yeah, so now what we're going to do is we're going to open up to a Q&A. And we're grateful to all of you who have dropped your questions into the chat. Thank you for doing that. Stephen, if you want to light up your camera, David, if you want to light up your camera, Karen, if you want to light up your camera, Yolanda, light up your camera. So let's start with a first question here. One of our questions is we got some questions about transportation. Someone's asked about parking garages and meter parking, and how people are going to get to God's love, and someone, yeah. So, and I know that we answered that privately, but we also just want to make sure that everybody can hear that. So, Karen, can you just speak to parking garages accessibility?
Sure.
Sorry, and apparently I have low bandwidth and I can't see the cameras, but apparently we're all on together. Sorry about that.
So happy to address the question of parking. So as you all know, alternate side has been suspended for a long time, and it's been not always easy, but it's been possible to park on the street. That is changing. So I urge you to follow that pretty closely. So in terms of parking garages as an alternative, at the beginning, like March and April, all the garages were closed. Driving around today, actually, I saw that a couple of them were open. The one that's very close to us at Van Dam is still closed, but there is one up near NYU that I believe is open, and I don't know about the one on West Broadway, but they're starting to open. So that's helpful for some people. The other thing that's an option are the meters along 6th Avenue and on Varick. They're on both places. They're 2-hour meters, so that's possible too. And they have been relatively available as well. So for people who would rather drive for whatever reason, the parking isn't perfect, but it is not impossible.
Very good. Thank you, Karen. We have a ton of evening folks on this webinar tonight. So we do have the question about the 6 to 8 p.m. shift. And the question is, when is that shift coming back? So Yolanda, can you respond?
Absolutely. So I am proud to announce that the evening shift, the 6 to 8 shift, will be returning as of August 3rd. So look into Volunteer Hub to sign up, or my team will be reaching out to you if you are a regular from that particular shift, and they will get you all set up.
Fabulous. 6 to 8ers, we're so excited to see you again. It does feel like an abrupt end to the day at 6 o'clock, so we're excited about that. Just again, someone has asked if we can send a summary of tonight tomorrow. Again, this whole webinar will be available on our YouTube, and we'll send it in an email. Someone has asked about, due to the changes in shifts, fewer people, more space in between people, and et cetera, that the shifts are quite demanding, and will we be incorporating a break of some kind into shifts? So Stephen, you might want to answer that.
Yeah, definitely. So yes, we hear you there, and we will speak with Chef Daniel and see what we can do about that, and see if we can do some alternating breaks and see if we can get some extra downtime in there for everybody. So that's definitely something that we will look into and speak with Chef Daniel about for sure. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great something that we needed to know about.
Great. Another shift question has come up. So Yolanda, this one's for you. Just generally, can you speak to what walking delivery looks like these days? Perhaps you can talk to us about the schedule and what that entails.
Okay, so walking deliveries start at 11 o'clock, and I believe it is Wednesdays and Fridays starting at 11 o'clock. Upon arrival, of course, they go through this screening process. They then come up to the volunteer lounge. Now that it's warmer during the daytime, a lot of our volunteers will go out onto the terrace and wait. Again, we are strictly enforcing the social distancing. Once their meals are ready, Jesus comes up, he gives out the meals, and then they start to leave out. We also are providing gloves. It actually is recommended that they wear gloves while delivering into the community. And we, again, will provide masks for those who are in need.
That's great. Thanks, Yolanda. And so just to that, can you share with us what are the most needed volunteer shifts at this time? Perhaps you might want to describe the new delivery shifts that we have going on during lunchtime with cars.
The car deliveries right now are 15 people, and it's primarily, it feels pretty good. We've had a number, that's a shift that fills up pretty quick. I don't know if it's just because people are out of work right now and want to get out the house, but we haven't had a real issue with filling those positions right now. They are starting to decrease in number as people are starting to go back to work, but we're still able to still get our deliveries out there.
Great. And again, we want to just, extend our great appreciation to everyone for being so flexible and finding the right shift that works for them. All of your efforts and flexibility are really
Absolutely
meaningful. And, alternate transportation to God's love has come up a couple times in the chat. And, if you can find a way to walk or scoot using a scooter or perhaps bike to God's love, if that makes you feel more comfortable. We do know that there are bike racks on the street. I believe they're across the street from God's Love We Deliver. There's a city bike station down the way, and we will look into sort of getting more access to alternative forms. We'll check in about bike racks and things like that for all of you. Thank you, everyone. Please continue bringing in your questions into the chat. They're wonderful questions. And Karen, you might want to answer this question about morning shifts, perhaps being moved later to avoid rush hour shift construction. I'm not sure who wants to answer that, so jump in.
Well, just in case people don't know, if you really want to avoid rush hour, come to the 6:30 shift or look for that on Volunteer Hub, because that's really early in the morning and the subways aren't very busy then. The 9 o'clock shift, I believe, I don't know how open the kitchen will be or meal packaging for that matter, to changing that, because they are trying to fit in a certain amount of work at each time. But in the same way that we're going to ask about breaks, we will put that on the list to ask Chef Daniel about whether there's any flexibility in starting that shift a little later, or whether that's really hard for them to manage. But after that, I think everybody knows we close the kitchen for a while, we clean it up, and then there's the afternoon shift, and there's a 4 to 6 shift as well.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Well, we've gone through everything from snacks to parking to different shifts, etc. If you have any other questions, you can put them in the chat. And maybe, Yolanda, can you just share a little bit about volunteer orientations? Because I know that there's been some shift there as well.
Sure. So of course, with COVID, it's been difficult to do the group orientation or to gather all the people who may be new on the shift during that shift or at the beginning of their shift. So we are trying to do individual orientations. Will people slip through the cracks? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So we are asking that our seasoned volunteers, if you see someone that looks a little disoriented or need just a little more help, just to let us know, and we will be happy to pull them aside and give them more guidance. But we have been trying very diligently to make sure that we're giving them the basic, a quick overview of the history of God's love, and then be able to review the kitchen safety with them as well.
Very good. And Yolanda, not to keep the spotlight on you, but
It's okay.
food safety has come up several times in the chat. And I know, volunteers talk about it a lot, as do we. Can you speak a little bit to staff being asked to sort of monitor for food safety and social distancing and mask wearing and that sort of thing? We're all just doing our best to make sure everyone's following protocol.
So if I understand your question correctly, we often have to just have reminders or a refresher on the proper protocols in the kitchen. Of course, all hair must be completely contained at all times. We want to make sure that if men have beards over a quarter of an inch long, that they are covered. Baseball caps are acceptable as long as they cover all your hair. For ladies who may have a ponytail, the ponytail hanging out the back is not acceptable. We want to make sure all hair is covered. We are very concerned about contamination of the food, so we want to be sure that we are covering all our hair. We want to make sure that gloves are worn. If you're leaving out of the kitchen, make sure you take your apron off. It's okay to leave the kitchen, but when you return, get a fresh new apron, wash up from fingertips to elbows for 20 good seconds, and then resume your task and responsibilities. Also, as far as shoes, no, we talked about that, but that's very important as the summer months come about with flip-flops and the tank tops. So your song, Emmett, on the tank tops is wonderful, and I think everyone should just revisit that, and just be mindful.
Great, thanks, Yolanda. And just to say,
Emmett,
we're asking, oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
And I would just add to this, as I'm looking at the list of the participants in the call tonight, this is our all-star team, right? So, we're in this together. So, if you see us and our mask isn't right, call us out, or your fellow volunteers or the staff, and, we'll help each other, because we're all in this together. And the only reason we're doing it is to try to keep everybody healthy. So I think, it's incumbent on all of us to try to make this happen over the next few months, or who knows how long, and until we get a vaccine or whatever the solution is.
Right. So there might be a staff member that you don't know who asks you to, put your mask on, differently or adjust it. And it's just meant to keep us all safe, to David's point.
And
yes, Karen.
For a moment. And one of the things I've been really heartened about as the staff has been talking about racial justice and equity is the people have been talking a lot about how in general we have a very respectful workplace where people treat each other with respect and dignity. And as you all know, that is part of what we have always brought to our clients for 35 years. And it's wonderful to know that people feel that way inside. So one of the things I would just say is, as we all are and have been different degrees of, but some amount of anxiety around COVID, and everybody is kind of anxious at one point or another, particularly earlier on, people were extremely anxious, but still many people are, is that as we correct each other, and feel free to correct me too if you see me violating the rules, but wearing masks, wearing them correctly, doing all the things, social distancing, making sure you use the hand sanitizer when you walk in the front door, all the many, many new things that we need to do to keep safe. We just ask that you correct people with great respect and with the same love that you show our clients, because it's really important during this time of extreme anxiety that God's love continues to be a place where people feel welcomed and part of a community. And, that today, as David said, we are all trying to remember that, as some days are more stressful than others.
Thanks, Karen. We have a great question over here about the Race to Deliver. Is it still scheduled for November? Stephen?
Yeah, that is a great question and a very hot topic. So as you may or may not know, the New York Roadrunners just canceled the marathon for this year. So that also, we've decided that we will not be doing the Race to Deliver in its traditional format. So we are in the process of interpreting it in a virtual format. So it will happen in November in some virtual way. So our events team is working on getting something together and launching by the end of July, some form of the Race to Deliver that will continue to happen in its virtual format in its 26th year here at the end of in November. So we will still have it. It will happen virtually. How and what platform, we are not sure. That is my new assignment this week, to figure all of that out. So it will happen somehow, and we will get it all and continue to the tradition of the Race to Deliver in its new virtual format. So yes, it will happen virtually. It will happen, and we will figure it out. And I see we have some question also for the Golden Heart Awards, and that's kind of the same answer as well. So it's all, we're working virtually with all of our events. They're all going to be interpreted virtually. We're not quite sure how they're all going to happen or how they're going to be launched this year. So as we figure them out, we'll be announcing them. My team is becoming experts in the field of virtual. We're attending a lot of virtual galas and virtual events and figuring out what people like and don't like and how to make ours the best of the best one when we finally have ours. So we will be having some form of a gala as well this year. What that looks like, we're not sure just quite yet. But as soon as we find out, we will let you know what that interpretation looks like. So stay tuned for God's Love Virtual World. It will be happening.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Stephen, and to everyone who's anxious to get back to our events. You know, we're really excited to figure all that out with you. But speaking of events, we do have an event tonight called Savor Pride. This week has been a week of virtual cooking demos. We have partnered with NYC Pride to put on Savor Pride in a virtual format this year. So all this week, we're having celebrity chefs and great friends of ours in the food community do virtual cooking demos from their homes into yours. And they're showing us how to make things like a lamb burger and a fish dish and everything you can dream of. Tonight at 7 o'clock, chefs Mavis J. Sanders and Cicely Sierra will be doing a live cooking demo, and it's going to be hosted by comedic YouTuber Kaylin Allen from The Ellen Show. And then we'll have our final Savor Pride event will be on Saturday night at 6:30, featuring Liz Alpern, who is the founder of Queer Soup Night, who are good friends of ours. So in case you're looking for something to do right after this and you're not all zoomed out, you know, hang around for Savor Pride. Go to our website to get the link. And just to say, we all know, just to go back to the Race to Deliver, we know that all of you want to find different ways to support the race. We know it's important to you, and we're really excited that you're looking to find different ways to make the race work for you.
Emmett, can I chime in?
Please, David, apologies.
So one other thing, happy Pride, everyone. It's been an unusual month of June, to say the least. And sadly, the Heritage of Pride March, of course, was canceled. But on Sunday, there is a march. It's the Queer Liberation March for Black Lives Matter. And it's going to go right up 6th Avenue, right past God's Love We Deliver. They're expecting 10 to 40,000 people to march. It was kind of last minute. It's on a shoestring budget. And what God's Love is going to do in support is have a water table in front of our building. So if anybody wants to come and help with that, to hand out water to the marchers, we would love to see you. We are going to gather here at God's Love around 12:30, and the marchers are going to start in Foley Square. They'll be coming by the building between 1 and 3 on their way to Washington Square Park. So if you're not doing anything on Sunday and you want to have a little taste of pride before the month of June is over, just let me know, or Yolanda, Stephen, Emma, Karen, and we can give you the details.
Also, just to add to what David just said, it is also listed on Volunteer Hub. So all details can be found on Volunteer Hub, and you can sign up and hope to see you there.
Great. And so I think we're coming to the very end of our session tonight, unless there's any other questions that anyone has out there. We're very grateful for all of your time and your questions. I think we're going to wrap it up. Just a friendly reminder that you can always contact the volunteer department at volunteer@glwd.org, right there on the screen. Our volunteer team works Sunday through Friday, so we try to get right back to you. And I guess, Karen, do you want to close us out?
I will just close this out by again saying we love your commitment. We're so thrilled that so many of you joined us tonight. We're thrilled that so many of you are volunteering with us during this period. And for those of you who are unable to volunteer with us now for your own personal and or safety reasons, we miss you. We can't wait for you to be back. God's Love is so lucky to have so many people who want to volunteer with us and who are part of our community, our family, the lives of our clients. We are just really grateful for your service and for your really big hearts. So thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for joining us for all these days, months, and for some of you, literally decades. We are really grateful.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Happy
Have a good night.
Pride.
Happy
Take
Pride.
care.